Today I want to talk about brake flares and the different types that you may run into as you're working on vehicles. It's very important that you understand the three different types of brake flares that you may run into. You have to know the shape of those flares so that you can get the right flare when you run into that. First one I want to show you is the SAE bubble flare right here. The bubble flare is kind of shaped like a volcano up here. It's found on a lot of American cars. You might find it on some European and Asian cars. Very popular type of flare. And you have this 45-degree angle at the base right here, and then another 45 up here. Here's some close-ups of different types of material. You could clearly see the 45-degree angle here, 45-degree angle there, and the kind of volcano shape on the top. The next one is the SAE double inverted flare. Now this flare starts out as a bubble flare, but then an extra step in making it turns it into the inverted right here. So basically another tool is used. So we start here with a bubble, and another tool is used to bend these down and make a very strong edge to the flare right there. Once again, you're going to be finding these on American and Asian cars predominantly. These are an example. We still have the 45 here since it did start out as a SAE bubble, but that extra step made it like a funnel shape here, and you can see this black area here. You can see this area here where it's actually folded it over like it shows in this picture right here. Now over here we have the single flare. You're not going to do single flares on brake lines. They're not strong enough. They can't hold the pressure. You'll find these on like transmission lines, stuff like that, fuel lines, not a lot of pressure on them. Never use a single flare on a brake line. The last type of flare that you may run into is the DIN ISO over here. Now what makes this flare unique is the bottom edge. You'll notice goes straight across. So the tubing goes up, and then it has a 90-degree turn right here, and it has a flat bottom. Still shaped like a volcano, so it kind of looks, at first glance, it kind of looks like the SAE bubble, but the big difference is that's a 90-degree, this is a 45-degree. And so here's a close-up of one right there. So you can clearly see the 90-degree bend at the bottom right there. And that's what's unique about the DIN. It's the only one with that 90-degree bend at the bottom. So it's very important before you start the flare that you get the right flare. So you're going to take out your old brake lines, you're going to look at those, and you're going to look closely and determine which flare you're dealing with. The flares that you do have to match the fitting for a good seal. Before you get into flaring brake lines, first we have to cut the line. And as we cut these lines, you want to make sure that the edges are really straight. Using a hacksaw or something like that is not going to make a really nice straight edge for you. So you need to use a tube cutter. Now tube cutters, they have rollers inside right here and right here, and it gives it a nice edge to roll on. So I can tighten this down, and the cutting edge will do the cutting for us. Now I'm going to have to put a pair of vice grips on this because this is pretty short and I can't stop the line from spinning, so I'm just going to clamp on a pair of vice grips out here. It'll give me something to hold on to the line while I'm doing this. So as I'm spinning this around, it'll get looser, and then you want to tighten down the knob a little bit more, and you just keep doing this until the cutter breaks through the whole line. And then you're going to notice that the end right here has been pushed in. So you're going to have to deburr that. Now some of these tools actually have a deburring tool built into it. Some of the cutters will actually have this little like funnel shaped tool for a deburring, but these ones don't. So I just use a really small countersink and just kind of go in, spin it around a little bit, and deburr the inside. Now you may need to deburr the outside edge, but these type of cutters don't really leave an edge on the outside. It's really smooth here. So if you did have a little edge on the outside, you'd want to take a little bit of sandpaper, kind of sand that down a little bit. But now we are ready to go and start flaring. The flares we do today, I'm going to use the SURR hydraulic brake flaring tool. This is a very nice tool compared to the old style where you had to put that yoke inside a vise and it was like a hit and miss if you got a good flare. With these types, with this type of flare tool, my students make perfect flares first, second time, and after that they almost make perfect flares every single time. It's a great kit. It's pricey, but it works in places that I couldn't use the old style tools. Just a great kit. Before you do any flares, make sure you put the nut on. Every mechanic, I don't care how long you do this, eventually you're gonna come up, you're gonna forget to put the nut on there. You do this beautiful flare, and then you go to put it in somewhere and you realize that you'd made a mistake and didn't put the nut on. So first thing is, we're gonna put the nut on here, gonna get it out of our way so we can start flaring. So the first flare we're gonna do today is the SAE bubble flare. So first we're gonna take the yoke here. This is the yoke, and we're gonna take this handle and we're gonna screw the handle into the back of the yoke. You'll also find the yoke has magnetic pieces in the bottom, little magnets down in here that help hold the dies in later on. And then we're going to choose the 3/16 die. Now, most brake lines, almost all brake lines in modern cars are 3/16. You might run into some really old 60s cars or older that don't have the dual piston master cylinder. Sometimes you'll find those will have a 1/4-inch line coming off to the master cylinder and then going down and then splitting off into 3/16. But you don't run into those very often. So we're gonna first take our first die, and if you notice right here, it has the words DIN 3/16 on one side and just 3/16 and 45. And you also see, if I take this apart, this side right here is for the DIN. It's got that 90-degree on the bottom, and this side has that 45. So this is going to be for the bubble flare and the inverted SAE flares afterwards. So we're going to put this with the 45 degrees angles right here facing toward we're going to put this right here. We're going to have these facing straight up and down. We're going to drop it in here where it faces where our hydraulic unit's going to go next. So if I was to look on the back side of this, I'd see the words DIN back here. Okay, we're not making a DIN, so we don't want the DIN facing this direction. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to select this punch that has OP0 on it. Okay, so right here, You kind of see that. It says OP0 right there. We're going to put this punch in the handle right here in the unit. We're going to make sure that I push this down, and I want to make sure it goes down all the way and clicks. I see a lot of my students trying to do it like this. They just push it in there like this. You got to make sure it's all the way down. And then I'm just going to kind of crank this thing just until it stops. Not really putting a lot of pressure on it, just until it stops. So what this is going to do is allow us to set the end of this flush with the end of the die right here. It's going to come out. It's going to push this thing through until it bumps up against there. And then I'm going to tighten this thing down a little bit. Just give it a little tight right here. I'm going to use this handle. Just kind of tighten it down a little bit, not too much. Now I'm going to release the pressure. Remove there, and now I'm going to really tighten it down good. You notice my fitting is on the back side of it. And I want to tighten this thing down really good. If you don't get this tight, when you use the next punch, you're going to force this brake line back into the die. And you'll notice it's flush with this. Okay, so the front of the brake line is flush with the face of the die. Now I'm going to take out OP0 and I'm going to find OP1. Now, these are 3/16 brake lines, so these are both 3/16. On the side of 1, it says DIN. It says DIN on the side of 1. I don't want the DIN. I want the 3/16 OP1. Okay. Also a little difference between them. You can see real close. This punch right here is a little bit bigger on the DIN than it is on the SAE bubble and the inverted. So this is OP1 and this is DIN. Notice the size difference in those pins. But it also has it written right on the side here, OP1 and DIN. So I'm going to put the OP1 punch in here. Lock it in. Now, as I'm going down through, I'm watching the center of the punch and making sure that it is going inside the hole. And then I just simply keep going. Let this handle out all the way also. Let it just go, and then right there it stopped. And that's as far as I want to go. Don't keep squeezing because you're going to damage the flare. Then I press the release. The punch comes back. Take this off. And if you look down inside there, you can see a nice looking SAE bubble flare. So at this point, I'm going to loosen this up. Remove my dies. And now I have a really good looking SAE bubble flare. So the last flare we made was the SAE bubble, and to make the SAE inverted, we just make another bubble. So once again, I've made sure I put my fitting on the end. I've deburred the inside of the hole, made sure this was nice and smooth. Now I'm choosing my die. The DIN is going to be facing toward the rear here. So I have DIN right there. Has to face toward the back. I'm going to grab OP1 or OP0. Grab OP0, punch, put it in here. Make sure it's clicked down all the way. Insert my my brake line through there, just kind of snug this down, not too much, just a little bit. And then I'm going to press this, and then as this is pushing it, pushes the die tight against here, and also puts the front edge of the OP0 flush with the die. So as soon as it stops, I stop. So I can make sure, oops. If you press too hard with this, you'll jam up the die here. So make sure my fitting is away from there. And now I've got this pushed up against here. So the brake line is pushed up against the front edge of this. And tighten this down. Release the pressure. Take this out, and I want to make sure that this is nice and tight. So if I was to look in here, I would notice that this is flush with this. If you get that out too far, you're going to get a flare that's too wide. If you get it in too far, if it's too far back in there, you're going to get a flare that's not really flared, it's really skinny. And if you don't tighten this much as you need to, if you don't tighten this down really good, then you're going to shove the line right out the back of here, and you're not going to get a flare at all. So got to pay attention to those. Take out OP0 and put in OP1. So remember, OP1 is to make the SAE double. And again, I'm making sure that the center of the punch is going into the center of the line. And once I make sure, I can just keep squeezing. As soon as it stops, you stop squeezing. Now I can release it, bring this out, and I've got a very nice SAE bubble flare on the end of that. But I want an SAE inverted. So remember, the inverted takes one more step, and it takes this guy right here. So this, just a cone shape, it's on here, it says 3/16 and 1/4. There's a bigger one right here. You're not going to use this on brake lines. So I put this in here, make sure it's down all the way, and squeeze it. Keep squeezing until it stops. Now, it just stopped. If you keep squeezing, if you squeeze this too hard, you're going to mess up the inverted part of the flare. So I release it. If I look inside here, that looks pretty good. So let's take it out and see how well I did. Got that 45-degree angle here on the bottom, but now we have the inverted part of it. So you'll notice around the edge, it's kind of like dull brass, and it's shiny in the center. That dull brass is actually kind of bent that over, and that looks like a really nice flare. Now the last type of flare is going to be our DIN and ISO DIN. Now, once again, I've cut the line, I've deburred it. Don't forget to put your nut on. Now this is a standard nut. It's not a metric. That's a whole nother thing of differences between those. But I'm just going to put this nut on just to kind of illustrate. Don't forget the nut. That's my whole point here. So this time I'm going to grab the same die, but instead of this 45-degree angle here facing toward this, I'm going to have the DIN side, and on the back side of the die it says DIN right here. So this time I want to have that facing toward the tool, toward the hydraulic unit. click all the way down, tighten it up until it just stops, slide my line through it, make sure that it's bumped up tight against here, then tighten this down, release the pressure, and then really tighten this thing down good. Okay, now I'm gonna, once again, make sure that the end of the line is flush with the die right here. This time, I'm gonna take the DIN die. And the DIN, once again, it's gonna say DIN on the side of it right here. So this time, I'm gonna put the DIN punch in there, not die, a punch. Make sure it clicks in, and I'm basically doing the same thing I've done with the bubble. Squeezing it till it just stops. By the way, if you release this and it doesn't come back, you probably didn't deburr the inside of the hole well enough. If you didn't deburr the inside of that hole, the end of this gets stuck in there. You might have to release, as you're releasing the pressure, you might have to put a little screwdriver to pop it back. And now, looks like a bubble, SAE bubble, but if I take it apart, it's all one step. You'll notice it's flat on the bottom. And this is what makes the big difference in the DIN, ISO DIN, is that flat bottom. Also, the hole on the top is a little bit bigger too than the SAE bubble. And so that's really it for today and how to use this hydraulic unit. Once again, it's a great unit. I mean, it makes professional flarers out of from novices very quickly. Oop, almost thought I put the nut on backwards. So it's a super great kit. I don't know, they're like $400 though, but if you want to make life easier, get one of these hydraulic. There's other good ones on the market too. I just happened to buy this one for my students. I bought like 4 of these so the students can learn how to do these. So thanks for watching, and please hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my channel.